Poverty and the environment are twin problems. We've realized we need to solve them together. One of the approaches that we've taken is trying to provide people with ways to earn more money that doesn't hurt the environment. Over the last decade or so, these types of programs have gained a lot of interest. And when I say a lot, I mean hundreds of millions of dollars have been invested in these programs worldwide. That's why it's been really important to figure out whether or not they're working. Before I joined the Nature Conservancy, we traveled to the Republic of Kiribati to do just that. Where is Kiribati? Well, okay, turn the globe until all you see is blue ocean. The 33 atolls of Kiribati cover an area in the Pacific the size of the United States. Kiribati is a sort of natural laboratory. Its economy is made up of two things: fish and coconuts. Some of the islands in Kiribati were starting to get very crowded. More people than ever before were fishing on the coral reefs to try and feed their families. On these crowded islands, the corals were under stress. The reefs were changing. There were fewer big fish to keep the reefs healthy and to feed people. When people aren't fishing in Kiribati, they gather coconuts on their land and they sell them to the government, which exports the crop. That's really the only way to get cash on Kiribati. As a part of a social welfare program, the government of Kiribati decided to increase the price of coconuts by 30%. Can you imagine getting a 30% increase in your salary? The reasoning behind this program was simple. It was standard economics. You increase the price for coconuts, people should harvest more coconuts, fish less, and the corals should be doing better. So, to figure out whether this price increase was actually having that effect, we traveled all over. We went by boat, we went by canoe, we went by prop plane. We talked with hundreds of families. And we went scuba diving in the coral reefs to see, were things actually getting better? How are the corals doing? Were there more fish? Was it going to be getting better for people? And sometimes on our day off, I even got to try my hand at fishing. That's because my local collaborator, Muiwei, that's all he wanted to do when we had a day off. So finally, we came home and we crunched the numbers. And this is what we found. People were actually fishing more. Then suddenly, that explanation hit me. It's just like the bumper sticker you see here in the United States. A bad day of fishing beats a good day of working. The men and women that we spoke to in Kiribati, they were earning more money in less time. And what did they want to do with that time? They wanted to go fishing. Muiwei was a case in point. When I revised my standard economic model to take account for the fact that people enjoy fishing and they make decisions based on personal motivations and based on their culture and not just on money, it all made sense. We learned in Kiribati that if our assumptions about human behavior are wrong, well-intended programs can backfire. They can fuel further environmental degradation and even poverty. This has sobering implications for the hundreds of millions of dollars invested in these programs worldwide. The experience in Kiribati brought me to behavioral economics and really to a larger problem. Our failure to identify the appropriate approaches to promote positive behavior change is a major impediment to achieving conservation solutions that provide better conditions for people and nature. This is a tough problem. It's tough because human behavior, it's complex. It's messy. All over the world, every day, we're making countless numbers of decisions. In different cultures, different contexts, we're deciding what milk to buy, how much fertilizer a farmer applies to his cornfield, whether to drill in the Arctic. On top of that, these decisions are based on values, beliefs, knowledge, prices, budgets, laws, social norms, our culture, what I had for breakfast, and lots of other factors. Given this wide range of behaviors and factors, it's no wonder there's been a proliferation recently in behavior change models to try and explain what's going on. Another reason why this problem is tough is that me, and probably you too, are pretty wary about feeling like someone's trying to change my behavior. But I know at the same time, we're hungry for ways to help us eat better, save money, and protect the environment. Despite these challenges, we need to forge ahead. We need science to help us identify the appropriate ways to create positive behavior change for conservation. To help us do this, we, and I say we because it takes a whole team to tackle the complexity of human behavior, we've tried to organize the broad set of approaches that we have available to us to promote this positive behavior change. We've organized it into categories based on underlying assumptions and the different barriers that these approaches try to remove to promote conservation. These categories are not necessarily mutually exclusive or distinct, but they represent the major ways that we can move forward. Let's take the first set of approaches. One thing that we try to do is try to promote people caring for the environment to promote conservation. Unfortunately, the numbers suggest that often this is not enough alone. Let's take the US, for example. There's a major gap between our attitudes about the environment and our actual behavior. So the vast majority of people in the United States say, yes, we should do something to protect the environment. We care about it. But when we have to start considering the costs and then actually do something, these numbers dwindle. This realization has brought us to another set of approaches. Okay, how about we also provide additional new incentives for people to conserve nature? Groups like the Nature Conservancy and others have been increasingly focusing on these sorts of programs and policies. So rather than just conserving nature for nature's sake, we're trying to promote conserving nature for what it provides to people. Let's take, for example, the work that we've been doing with businesses and communities on coastal conservation. So conserving coastal habitats is great for providing habitat for wildlife, but it turns out it also helps protect people from floods and storms. And we've been trying to show this by putting it in economic terms. For example, we've been collaborating with the Dow Chemical Company to develop methods for businesses to evaluate the role of coastal marshes in hurricane risk mitigation. These sort of methods allow businesses to compare marshes side by side with levees and do it in financial metrics that actually make sense to a business. And let me tell you, this has caused a lot of engineers and business people to start thinking differently, to start thinking about conservation as a business solution because it makes economic sense. We've also taken similar approaches working with communities. And we've done our cost-benefit analyses, and sometimes we've gotten surprised. These communities, some of them, they're choosing nature, even when it's more expensive. But of course, communities aren't for-profit businesses. They choose these nature-based solutions because they create a sense of place. And the reality is, even businesses care about other things. These days, businesses recognize that long-term profits and sustainability go hand in hand. Let's go back to the example of Dow. They just announced a goal that they're going to find $1 billion in projects that are good for business and ecosystems. So I'd say we're making progress. We're making progress on providing these new incentives and encouraging more conservation behavior. But we've learned we've got to get the multiple incentives right. This brings us to the third category of approaches. So the two categories of approaches I've talked to you about so far, they really rely on reasoning and rational thinking. The third category, behavioral nudges, they sidestep all of that. They go straight to tapping into our hidden brain and into intuition. Behavioral nudges work by making small changes to the decision context that don't eliminate any choices and they don't change incentives, but they just make it easier and more intuitive to conserve nature. So intuitive decision making, this is how we make the vast majority of our decisions every day. It's automatic, it's based on gut instinct. In contrast, rational decision making is deliberate and it requires calculations. So one thing that we've learned by working with businesses and communities on coastal conservation is that the status quo and the default matters a lot when you're using intuition, and we use it all the time. So we were looking around and we found the exception that proves the rule here. We found that although levees and seawalls and engineered solutions are the default in most places, we found a place, Maryland, that had 10 times more nature-based solutions than any other place in the United States. And we thought, what the heck is going on? And it turns out that they enacted a policy in 2008 that turned things on its head. They changed the default from engineered solutions to nature-based solutions. So now, it's easy to choose nature as the solution for coastal erosion. And it requires a lot of extra calculations to demonstrate that engineering solutions are needed, not the other way around. What have we learned from all this? Behavior is messy. It's complex. One-size-fits-all approaches may not work, and they could even backfire. We need science to help us identify the multiple approaches that can help us promote positive behavior change in particular contexts. We need to stop making assumptions about human behavior. Or to put it another way, we need to avoid falling into the trap that I fell in Kiribati when I did some armchair economics, and then I was suddenly surprised by how real people make real decisions. We need science to help us answer these questions. Who are the key actors and behaviors for conservation? What are the underlying mechanisms driving their behavior? And what are the barriers to conservation? How does context matter and affect behavior? And what does all of this mean in terms of designing programs and policies that draw on the three broad approaches that I've outlined today? Promoting caring for the environment, providing alternative incentives for conservation, and using behavioral nudges. This is going to take some new research and experimentation. It's also going to take some new capacity in terms of expertise. And it's going to take some new capacity to say, we're human, but we need science to help us understand human behavior.